Welcome to We in Lewes, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewes, Delaware, and are helping forge a community soul as appealing as it is unique. I'm Kevin McGinnis. Our guest today is Sharon Dardine, the Secretary of the Board of the Historic Lewes Farmers Market, a former real estate agent, a presidential appointee during the Reagan administration, stationed in Geneva, and worked at the renowned international law firm Fried Frank, and is at the center of so much of what happens in Lewes. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at the Leanne Wilkinson Group of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Penn Fed Realty. Whew. Leanne and her team have ranked number one in real estate sales in coastal Delaware for over 20 years and ranked number two nationally for the Berkshire Hathaway real estate work. Leanne and her team make it easy, whether you're buying, selling, or just searching for the perfect home to start a family or spoil grandchildren. We're very excited and grateful for their support, as well as so many other charitable and civic efforts they are behind in Lewes, including the historic Lewes Farmers Market. Sharon, welcome.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
What makes the historic Lewes Farmers Market so beloved in our community? Is it the mission, the success, the strong advocacy of local farmers, or the fact that Market Day can be downright fun?
I think it's all of the above, Kevin. The sense of community is very important. We're a nonprofit, and we have a lot of programs other than supporting the farmers, facilitating them coming to the market and being able to sell their produce and their meats, with the idea that perhaps that will help them, not perhaps it will help them, to hold on to their farms, and that's important. We feed in our food pantry purchase program many people. And that's a really big part of our mission. And Saturday mornings is just fun. It's where everybody wants to be on Saturday morning. This Saturday we had 2,500 people.
Really?
We've had more, but that was okay.
And people on the pantry program can come and get food at the market. Is that right?
No. The way that works is shoppers can go to the stand and ask that particular farmer to put away $10, $15, $20 or whatever of produce or meats, and they'll pay for it. The customer will pay for it. And then Epworth comes at the end of the market and collects all of that and brings it back to their food pantry. And they also support a lot of other smaller food pantries.
Okay.
So it gets spread around.
That's great. Now, I know you abhor bragging, but the historic Lewes Farmers Market is award-winning and nationally recognized. I believe you were ranked the number one farmers market in all of Delaware, and the biggest. Received a United States Department of Agriculture Farmers Market Promotion grant of almost $100,000, and for 15 years have been awarding scholarships to small-scale Delmarva farmers. Normally, this means there's a very effective team behind the scenes.
We're very much a working board, and we promote those programs deeply.
Do you meet routinely?
The board meets once a month for 2 hours, usually on a Sunday morning. But we are in contact with each other all week long. I mean, nobody has their cell phone turned off, because there's always something that's happening or we need to work with.
The market is responsible, and I was surprised at this, for more than 30% of all farmers market sales in Delaware, even though there are a lot of other farmer markets in the state. Is this the kind of success you had in mind when the farmers market started?
Well, I think we just wanted to be the best, and that's where we ended up because we work really hard to achieve that goal.
How did you make sure you were the best? Did you tour other ones and see what they were doing?
Before we, speaking of touring, before we even take in a farmer, we're a producer-only market, meaning if you don't grow it or raise it, you can't sell it at the market, and we have no crafts. But if we get somebody who wants to become a vendor at the market, and it's, they raise pigs or something, we'll actually go visit that farm and talk to them and see how they're raising them, if they're raising their meats humanely, and how clean the farm is, and what these folks are like. We do that with every new vendor.
And then do you all have a group that's meeting throughout the week to organize all of the activities? Because you do a lot more than just the farmers market. You actually have two different days.
Well, our Wednesday farmers market, actually this coming Wednesday will be the last market. We started that market, I want to say, I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Because Crooked Hammock offered us that space. It's a wonderful area for older people to come and be more comfortable. There's plenty of parking. It's easier to walk there than it is on the grass. And we started out with maybe 8 vendors. Now we have 14. So it became a much bigger market this year, and it's very successful.
And what is the size of the Saturday market?
35 vendors.
And that's grown over the years, correct?
We've had 32 to 34 for quite some time. They fluctuate. I mean, very rarely does a vendor drop out. If they do, it's because they can't keep up with the production. We bring in so many customers. Can't be somebody who only has little to sell. So we lose somebody every once in a while. And then we find somebody every once in a while that really meets our mission, and we're very excited to have it.
Why is the market so critical to local farmers? Because I understand somewhere during COVID, you worked very hard to make sure they had a market where they could sell their products.
We did. That was COVID was tough. It was very tough on us. It was very tough on the farmers. And we knew they had to continue to have a place to sell their product. And we worked with the Delaware Department of Agriculture to ensure that we could continue the farmers market. It was a little more difficult with Delaware than it was in Maryland, but we managed. And I will say now that we've been as successful as we have a really good relationship with the Delaware Department of Agriculture. I mean, they support us.
And you provide scholarships.
We do.
For local farmers.
It's emerging farmers. We like to find small farmers who need some education and some encouragement to go into business, to do what they do, to grow. So we offer scholarships once a year.
When you go to the market, things are so well organized. I mean, you get help parking, the layout of the tents and the booths. You get the sense that the whole operation magically runs seamlessly. Obviously, creating that impression requires a lot of work. What is the size of staff and the number of volunteers required to open, run, and close the market?
Oh, my. We have about 150 volunteers.
Wow.
It takes 30-some to run every Saturday market. Like you said, we have parking. We have monitors inside. The board there's a market manager for every market, and it rotates. So there's always somebody in charge. We have a staff called the Tentations.
Right.
It's 10 or 12 guys that come every Saturday morning and at 6:30 in the morning and help put up all the tents, even the vendors' tents. And then they come back at noon and help assemble everything. And they're dedicated. And some of those people have been a Tentation for quite a number of years. We're an older community, so it becomes increasingly difficult for older people to work, especially in the height of summer. When it's 95 degrees out, it's really tough on people.
It is. You didn't grow up in Lewes.
No, I did not. I was born and raised in Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is a little town just outside of Camden. Pretty little town. Very much like Lewes.
I've seen pictures of it, and it really is. It looks charming.
It's Lewes on steroids. It's a much bigger town. It's got a longer main street, Kings Highway, actually. My grandfather came on a boat from Italy when he was 16 years old, steerage class. And at some point, I don't know how he did it. He started out with a shoe repair shop. And then he had a very thriving, everybody knows Ricky's Shoe Store, if anybody in South Jersey. It was very thriving. And initially, I lived upstairs with my mom and my father, but my father was in the Army Air Corps, so he was gone a lot, or gone actually. And that was, just lived downtown. And then when I was 3, he came back and we built a house on Euclid Avenue in Haddonfield. And I stayed there until I got married when I was 22.
After high school, did you go on to college?
I did. I went to St. Francis of Loretto, Pennsylvania, because I thought I didn't want any help from anybody in my family. I'm going to do it by myself. And I had gone to Catholic school my whole life, so I thought I needed to go to a Catholic college, and I wanted to go to a Catholic co-ed college, and that was it. And it was not a great education.
Okay.
I will tell you that. Yeah.
What did you major in?
Business, and the professors. There was one other woman in the class, and he hated us both.
What?
Women weren't supposed to be doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, did you meet your first husband there?
Yes, in Haddonfield, yes. He was just a really, really nice man. Quite good looking. He had graduated from Drexel. We got married. I met him actually at a bar with a friend of mine. And we got married, and we had a nice little house in Haddonfield. And then he was transferred to Maryland. He worked for AT&T Long Lines. And we lived in Greenbelt, Maryland for, I don't know, not too many years in an apartment. And then somewhere along the line, that marriage dissolved. And I moved to an apartment downtown in D.C.
In D.C.?
Yeah.
And what were you doing in D.C. then?
Well, I started, actually, my first job was at Butcher and Sherrod in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. Butcher and Sherrod was a stock brokerage firm.
Well, there was a member, I think you once told me there was a member of organized crime who was
It was a mobster. I can't remember his name. I wish I could. And I worked for a man by the name of Lloyd Elliott, who was the broker, a head broker, and Angelo Bruno. So Angelo Bruno was the client of Lloyd Elliott, and he's sitting next to Lloyd's at his desk, and Angelo and one of his henchmen are sitting in chairs next to Lloyd's desk. Lloyd calls me over to do something, but it's maybe involved enough that I had to sit. So Angelo Bruno says to his henchman, "Hey, get up and give the lady your chair." I have all those funny memories. But when we moved to D.C., that's exactly when I started working for Fried Frank. I worked for them for over 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you get a job at Fried Frank?
I didn't know anybody at Fried Frank. We didn't have anything like Indeed or anything at that point, so I don't know how it was advertised.
I didn't know if you're out pouting the pavement as you trying different places.
No, I didn't. Somehow or other, I never needed to pound the pavement. I was cocky. I thought I was very marketable.
Well, you clearly were. What was the firm like in those days? I mean, you have images of those sort of law firms, there seem to be something out of a movie set in terms of everyone's very well dressed and it's very organized. And was it that way?
Yes and no. It was a very organized firm. It originated in New York. Actually, it started out actually as an Indian Affairs law firm. It morphed into corporate for, not in the, pretty soon. But I enjoyed it. I mean, they were very good to us. I had been hired to work for one of the partners, but shortly thereafter, Max Campbellman plucked me, and that was the end of that. So
now, not a lot of people remember Max, but he is one of those historic figures that seemed prevalent in D.C. around World War II and just after. These were very successful, very smart, very patriotic people who weren't party affiliated as much as very competent. And they were enjoyed by both presidents, whether they were Republicans or Democrats. You don't see that much anymore, that sort of person.
I don't think you do. I mean, we're just so polarized now. I don't think that exists. There's something else interesting about Freed Frank. There were two partners of Freed Frank that were of interest. One was Sergeant Shriver, and one was Marty Ginsburg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's husband. So I knew both of them for all those years too.
Wow. Now, what was working for Max like?
He was a very, very nice man, and we were very close. He was tough, but he appreciated my skills. We didn't argue. He would say things like, "Though, you forgot to remind me to take my pills." And I used to have to fill up his inkwell.
He had an inkwell.
Yeah, and that didn't last real long. That just wasn't something I thought I should have to do as a college graduate.
And then Max got an appointment, right?
In 1980, well, this was the second appointment that I was involved in. His first appointment was another negotiation in Spain that he was plucked to do. And he was very successful at that. So then when Reagan came up with what we called Star Wars at the time, but it was the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, they asked Max to chair that delegation. And that was about the same time as, I'll skip to it. I then got married again, but then that marriage fell apart. So, and when George Shultz called Max in 1985 and said that the president would like him to chair this delegation, and my marriage had fallen apart, and I was just getting the divorce papers, I went into Max and said, "I'm going to." And he said, "Okay." So that was the most interesting, best 4 years of my life. Just a whole lot of fun.
Geneva is an amazing town.
It is. But the kind of things where you take dictation in the bubble. I mean, you don't grow up thinking of things like that, you know. And, Max had not bodyguards, but people who were watching. And if he walked home, he had an apartment on the other side of the lake, and he liked to walk. So if he was walking, we wanted him to wear a bulletproof vest. I mean, it was still the Cold War.
Negotiating with the Soviets was even more tough than it had been sometimes in the past because there were so many internal forces.
Max was a very good negotiator, and his idea was you had to stay at the table one day longer. That was the way he structured his negotiating.
And was there a place where the Americans who had these sort of positions lived?
Yes. We all were on a per diem, and we could live just about anywhere we wanted to live in. That was in close proximity to the mission. Geneva is not the capital of Switzerland, so it's not an embassy. It's a mission, but functioned like an embassy. And Max his title was Ambassador Extraordinaire. But that didn't mean he was. That they gave you that title, and that didn't mean
that wasn't a descriptive commentary.
No, and it didn't mean that he ran the mission. There was still an ambassador. He's still called an ambassador that ran the mission. But Max ran this negotiation at the mission or through the mission.
I spent a little time in Geneva. Nothing comparable, but in Geneva is a very sophisticated town. It can be a very elegant town.
Uh-huh.
And I believe when you're doing missions of this sort, there's both the substantive work and then the substantive work of the social side. Was that true? A lot of effort goes into making sure the social things are done correctly.
We had visiting us often was something called they called them CODELs.
Right.
A congressional delegation would come out to Geneva and visit us. And it was, it was Kennedy and just John Warner. It was an interesting group of diplomats.
And do they have to be squired around?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think if I should say what I want to say on some of these things.
Go ahead.
John Warner wanted me to go find him a pair of nylon stockings. I think he was married to Elizabeth Taylor at the time, but I can't quite remember that. There was I won't mention his name, but there was another diplomat who wanted me who liked my perfume. That was his come on, and I said, well, I'll go get some for your wife. I think she would like it. It was, those kind of things were just really funny. Do you remember a guy by the name of Uri Geller?
Yes.
I was sent out to go find radish seeds for Uri Geller to look at his hand and grow.
Well, you got to ask. A, did you find the seeds? And B, did they grow?
I found the seeds, and I don't remember what they grew. But I do remember he was staying at the Noga Hilton. I don't know why I even remember the name of the hotel. And I went to pick him up with, in a congressional or in a ambassador's car. I went to pick him up, and I walk in the lobby, and I don't see anybody. And I'm not sure that I even knew what Uri Geller looked like at the point. And this person starts descending upon stairs. And I said, "Oh, Mr. Geller." And he said, "How did you know?" So the funny things that you remember, that just made it all a lot of fun.
When you staff people at that level, having worked in the Senate myself, there's sort of you have to have the wherewithal to, at the last second, give a speech on behalf of whoever you're working for on a topic you know nothing about in front of 500 people, and then pick up the dry cleaning on the way home.
Right.
It takes a unique person to be able to do both.
Well, I never, luckily, had to give any speeches. Max was very good at that. I'm, as evidence right now, I get a little tongue-tied and forget what I want to say. But it was great. Because Max was the chief of mission, and I was his gatekeeper. I could just go down to the motor pool on a Friday night and ask for a car. And instead of asking your friends, in the office, "Do you want to go see a movie tonight?" I'd say, "Where do you want to go tonight?" And one night, it was a Ford Taurus. They had just come out, and that's what they had at the mission. And I piled a bunch of girls in there, and I drove pedal to the metal, and we woke up in Barcelona.
What?
I had to see everything. I knew this wasn't going to last forever, so I had to see everything there was to see.
Wow, that's a multiple border drive.
Yeah, but I did it.
Wow, good for you. Good for you. Did you really see everything within a car ride of Switzerland?
Well, yeah. I mean, we would go grocery shopping because Geneva is so central. We would go grocery shopping in France, and then we'd go to Italy for meals. I mean, we certainly had meals in Geneva, but it was just easy to get around to Germany when every close European country. I made sure that myself and my friends got to see it.
As wonderful as this whole experience was, you decided to end it. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, when you're a political appointee, in 1989, when Reagan's no longer president, there goes that position. So Max went back to the law firm, And I went back to the law firm with him. And that was for another 10 years. And they were the most boring 10 years of my life. Had I never experienced what I did in Geneva, I wouldn't have been bored. But I was bored, which leads to how I ended up here.
Well, how did you end up here?
Okay. There's a couple on my block in D.C. I lived on Hall Place, which was a block south of Calvert, Wisconsin. And I was bored, as I said, and my friend Amy Shapiro said, why don't you think about moving to the beach? And it never occurred to me, even though my husband and I had owned a house in South Bethany on the beach. And so I went in the house and I thought, well, that's a damn decent idea. So the next 3 weekends I got in a car and I drove down here and I went to Lewes, which, by the way, I had been here before because when we had the house in South Bethany, we used to come up to Gilligan's for dinner on occasion. When Lewes was a lot different than it is now. But so I came down 3 weekends in a row, and the third weekend I found a house that I really liked, and I put an offer on it, and then I went home and quit my job and sold my house. Just backwards of what any sane person would do today.
So this person suggested you live at the beach, mm-hmm. and based upon that, you came down, found a house, sold your house.
Yep.
Did you have a job lined up?
No. But I made a little bit of money on my house, so I knew I could survive until I could do something. So, and it's the best decision I ever made. I love it here. And that was 23 years ago, July 1st.
So you moved here July 1st, 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And when did you first meet Helene Harris?
Must have been 2005. Right before when she was just forming the market. She was gathering a group of us to be on the board. And there were probably 6 of us at the time, 5 or 6 of us. And I met her. We got along. I had a skill set that she was looking for. And I liked the mission. I liked the people. I knew that I had to volunteer to do something here because I didn't know anybody. I knew one person. And I think, as you know, I'm a little gregarious for just knowing one person. So it was important for me to meet a lot of people. And I have. I know a tremendous amount of people now. And that's been important to me.
What was it about the mission that appealed to you?
Everything that the mission is. I mean, the whole idea. I love the community. Initially, it was a community idea, and the community-based, the Saturday morning thing to do, and working with the farmers, meeting the farmers, knowing, know your farmer, know your food, getting to know these people that sustain us.
And was the mission at that time as diverse as it is today, or has it grown?
It's grown.
It's grown.
We didn't have a food purchase pantry program or anything like that. We do also do something at the end of every market called gleaning, where the farmers who have produce or meats or whatever that they haven't sold, but don't want to take back to the farm for a number of reasons, we go around and collect that at the end of every market, and Casa San Francisco comes and picks that up. And then at the end of the year, we give each of those vendors a letter so that they can write off whatever their donation was.
Do you think that the skill set that you developed when you were working at Fried Frank, when you were in Geneva, do you think that helped?
Oh, yeah.
With working with Helene?
Because that's who I am. I'm an organizer. I'm a list taker. Initially, we didn't have a trailer, so we'd have to do is I had a shed in my backyard. The house I bought, by the way, was on Mulberry Street. But I had a shed in my backyard, and we'd keep our tables and chairs and whatever tents we had in my shed. Go pick it up in a pickup truck on Saturday morning, and then bring it back to my shed. Until one day that we could afford to buy a trailer. And that gave me back my shed back.
It's grown a bit since then.
Oh, yeah.
For those who are new to our town, perhaps retiring here or relocating, what advice would you give them in how to make Lewes your new home?
Volunteer. Get to know people. Many people move here, they don't know. They know one or two people. And if you're going to have a successful life, not just, you need to know a lot of people. You need to meet people. And the best way to meet people is to volunteer. And the number of volunteer opportunities here in Lewes is endless. So that would be my biggest advice.
And in your case, though, the volunteer opportunity came to you. Is that right?
Well, I was looking for something to do. I mean, I knew I wanted to do something, but then it just didn't. It plopped in my lap like other things plop in my lap. So, yeah.
But you do a bit more. You've been mentioned in other podcasts, so I know you do a lot more than just the farmers market around town.
Carol and I and Brenda and Jeff and Lori Mills. People started talking to us about, well, I hated our Christmas decorations when I moved down here. Those colored things that lights were all burnt out. And so I don't know how we ended up getting together and deciding we wanted to do something about that. So we formed a committee and we started taking donations to put up all these snowflakes. That was our effort, and it was successful. And then we complain about ourselves if there's bulbs that are burned out, and why can't we get those fixed? And we're critical of that. But we're glad we did it.
What do you do for fun here in town?
I love to go out to eat. Breakfast is my favorite meal. I love to go out to meet. I like to go to lunch at least one day a week, and I like to go to dinner at least one day a week. But I'm comfortable in my home.
Well, other than Kindle, which we know, since we're recording here, is in a category unto itself, where else do you find fine dining here?
I like Harbor because I love I like Elaine and Gary a whole lot. And I love the atmosphere. I love sitting on the water. I like Louis Oyster House. If the traffic's bad, I like Matt's Fish Camp because I can park. And now that I have a little difficulty parking or walking, it's important for me to try to find some place where I can park. There's a sad thing in my life now, though, and that's that I'm older and I don't need anything. So I don't shop anymore for anything except food. And I miss that. I miss shopping.
And there are a lot of opportunities to shop here, too.
Oh, there's a ton of opportunities. Yeah. But at this point in my life, I need to get rid of things. I don't need to be accumulating anything.
When you look back over your life and you see all the things you've done, hobnobbing with mobsters in Philadelphia or working at Fried Frank or being in Geneva, was there something special about living overseas in such an important job with a mission that is so impressive?
Yes, but what was important I had never been to Europe. So the whole experience was just mind-boggling to me. It opened my eyes. I loved Europe. I loved everything about it. I wish that I actually could live there right now. In addition to just the work being so interesting, the idea that I got to travel as much as I did, in all over, I was really sad when that died, because it was the most fun and the most interesting thing I'd ever done in my life, and nothing's come close.
And you had the luxury of working for a very good person.
A very nice, kind person who we had great chemistry. He was my mother's age. And Maggie Campbellman and I were very good friends too. But Maggie didn't like to travel, so I was over there. We were over there a lot without Maggie. And Max had to entertain the Codells or other people that came into town, and I was the hostess for that. I measured how far the cake plate was from the end of the table and helped decorate the apartment, and it was just everything about it was just so much fun and so interesting.
And Max didn't care about those sort of details.
Not at all. Not at all. He'd come to work, he'd have a brown sock on, a black sock on. And I, tried to dress him, tried to, take him someplace, get some decent. Max had done very well in his life. And sometimes when people are very well off, and often, clothes just aren't important. He wasn't stuck on what he looked. There was no vanity in Max.
What makes Lewes so special? Because let's be honest, you could have lived almost anywhere if you'd wanted to. What makes Lewes so special that you've made it your home?
I fell in love with Lewes when I drove through. I said, I really could. I like this little small town atmosphere. And the town was pretty progressed when I was, 23 years ago. Not like it is today, but no, it was just, I liked it. It was close. My sister lives in New Jersey still. And I guess I felt that I needed to be, within some kind of proximity. And if I couldn't live in Europe, then this seemed like okay. It's the friendships. Well, when I came here and I bought a house on Mulberry Street, I had made, like I said, a little bit of money on my house and Hall Place. And this house needed a lot of work. So for a year, I worked on the house and, had some minor contracting done on the house. New kitchen, stuff like that. And my next door neighbor at one point said to me, you can't sit on your duff the rest of your life. You're going to want a job, aren't you? And I said, okay. And he was a realtor, and he said, why don't you get your license? So I got my license. I guess people give me suggestions, and I think, well, that's a good idea. When I think about it now, why don't you move to the beach? Why don't you become a realtor?
So you were a realtor here.
Yeah.
Did you work at an agency, or you're
Yes.
on your own?
I started out. I started out because he had his license in Bethany. I got my license in Bethany, and I worked there for, I don't know, I can't remember how many years. A couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years. And then the commute became ridiculous. And I came up here, and I actually worked for Gallo, for Leanne's firm. And then I worked for Ocean Atlantic. But, realtors here just flip. Other than Leanne, who, it's her family business, we tend to move around a lot. So my last job was at Long and Foster. But then I, when it was clear that I couldn't walk as well as I'd like to and was getting pretty old, I turned in my license.
Did you like selling?
I loved it because I like people. I mean, and I'm still very friendly with most of the people. Most of the people that I've sold a house to either volunteer or come to the market every Saturday.
Really?
Yeah. So a good number of them. So I get to see them and they still talk to me and are very nice to me. So I guess they don't think I sold them the wrong house. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I mean, I don't think I'm arrogant, but I'm fine with myself. I like myself. I like my dog, and I like Netflix.
What's your favorite show?
On Netflix? Well, I'm into Chinese dramas.
Chinese dramas?
Chinese and Korean dramas.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a show you'd recommend?
Yes. One of them is, it's not a show, it was a series. Here to Heart. I love these gut-wrenching, dramatic love stories, Nobody kills anybody else. Well, that's one I just watched, they did. But I'm not into sci-fi. My feet are kind of firmly planted, so I don't do sci-fi. And I just like romantic dramas. I want everybody to be happy at the end. Funny things that you remember. There's a gentleman in town named Kevin Smith. Kevin was Biden's Sussex County, whatever. When I'm on Mulberry Street in 2002, Kevin Smith knocked on my door and said that Senator Biden would like to film his 2002 campaign at my house, because my house looked like the quintessential Lewes residence, and I thought, well, that kind of sounds like fun. So we did, and it was really very interesting. There was a vacant lot next door where they had all the tents and the tables and chairs for the food for the people that were working on this, and the little railroad tracks down Mulberry Street were, for the cameras.
Mm-hmm.
It rained cats and dogs the whole day. So Joe Biden and I were in my house by ourselves most of the day. Never in a million years did I think that one day that this would be the president. But we just had a really nice time. He was just a very interesting, very kind man. And he would, at one point there were, my dining room table had like 8 chairs around it, and there was a pale blue button-down shirt on every one of the chairs for him to change into when he would come in from outside and he was soaking wet.
Did you keep a copy of the commercial?
No.
Oh.
And I have searched archives all over the place trying to find something on it, and I can't find a damn thing.
Did you see it?
Hmm?
Did you ever see the commercial?
No.
So you have Joe Biden, senator then, future president of the United States, in your house with you for the entire day.
Uh-huh.
Did you talk about anything? Did you give him some advice?
We didn't give advice. I didn't give advice. But we talked about Catholicism. I grew up Catholic, and of course he's Catholic. We talked about that. We talked about, I don't know what we talked about, other than we just talked. I mean, I can't say, I don't even know if I think at that point I was a registered Republican. So I don't think we talked about that kind of politics. But he was just lovely. And it was a real experience, something I'll always remember.
Sharon, thank you for joining us today and sharing your story. And thank you for all you're doing and have done for our city. You are the personification of the we in Lewes.
And thank you, Kevin. This was a lot of fun. As trepidatious as I was, I've enjoyed myself. Well, the cat didn't get my tongue, that's for sure.
I don't think the cat's gotten your tongue ever. A special thanks to today's sponsor, the Leanne Wilkinson Group. Seems more appropriate by the minute of this episode. It's great. There's a good reason they're number one. It's the excellent and professional service they provide every client. You can find more at www.leannegroup.com. And finally, thank you for joining us and your kind words of support these past months. As always, we appreciate your comments and suggestions, especially the good ones. Our next episode will air later this month. For more information and updates, please follow on our Instagram and Facebook accounts at We in Lewes, the podcast. Have a wonderful day, and please, the next time you're in town, if you can, stop and take a moment to enjoy the remarkable hamlet called Lewes, which some of us are lucky enough to call home. Till next time, this has been We in Lewes, the podcast.